Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 23rd, 2024 regular City Council meeting. I would I'll wait till everybody is ready. I just kind of started without asking. So you can watch the City Council meeting on the city's YouTube channel or on longmontpublicmedia.org/watch or on Comcast channels 8 or 880. Can we have a roll call, please, Dawn?
Absolutely. Mayor Peck.
Present.
Councilmember Christ.
Present.
Councilmember Doggle-Faring.
Here.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Councilmember McCoy.
Present.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Yarbrough.
Let's stand for the
Mayor, you
pledge.
have quorum.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As a reminder to the public, only Longmont residents and employees of the City Council may speak during the first call public invited to be heard. And you must provide your address on the sign-up sheet before the meeting. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Anyone may speak on the second reading or public hearing item, and you are asked to add your name to the speaker list for that specific item before the meeting. Anyone may speak during final call public invited to be heard. Members of the audience shall refrain from disruptive, vulgar, or abusive language, applause, heckling, or other actions that interfere with the orderly function of this council. Now we have to approve minutes. May I have a motion for the April 9th minutes?
May I move the April 9th, 2024 regular session minutes as presented?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo-Faring. Let's vote. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Do we have any agenda revisions tonight, Dawn?
We don't have an agenda revision, Mayor. We have a substitute ordinance for the ethics ordinance on second reading. It's in hard copy at your desk. Formatting was fixed. There are no substantive wording changes. It's just the formatting was a little off.
Okay,
And
thank
just a
you.
reminder that the presentation TVs are broken, as is your feed at your desk, so you have paper presentations this evening.
Okay. So I guess the audience won't be able to see the presentations when they're being presented. Is that correct?
It would appear that that is not going to work, yes. The
Okay.
one working TV is not showing presentation. We'll see.
Okay. Are there any motions from City Council to direct the city manager to add agenda items to future agendas? Seeing none, can we have the city manager's report?
No report, Mayor, Council.
We do have a special presentation. It is a proclamation designating the month of April as Parkinson's Awareness Month in Longmont. I have so many papers up here because that I'm just trying to find them all. So, a proclamation designating the month of April 2024 as Parkinson's Awareness Month in Longmont, Colorado. Whereas Parkinson's disease is a chronic progressive neurological disease and is the second most common neurodegenerative disease in the U.S., affecting almost 1 million people, with one person being diagnosed every 9 minutes. And whereas Parkinson's disease and related health issues are the 14th leading cause of death in the U.S., according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And whereas it is estimated that the total national economic burden of Parkinson's is approximately $52 billion each year. And whereas research suggests the cause of Parkinson's disease is a combination of genetic and environmental factors, but the exact cause and progression of the disease is still unknown. There is no objective test or biomarker for Parkinson's disease, and there is no cure or medication to slow or halt the progression of the disease. And whereas the symptoms vary from person to person and include tremors, slowness of movement and rigidity, difficulty with balance, swallowing, chewing, and speaking, cognitive impairments and dementia, mood disorders, skin problems, and sleep difficulties. Whereas researchers, caregivers, and medical professionals are working to improve the quality of life of persons living with Parkinson's disease. Now therefore, I, Joan Peck, Mayor, by virtue of the authority vested in me in the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2024 as Parkinson's Awareness Month in Longmont, Colorado. Who is receiving this? Come on up. This is a horrible disease. I've had friends that have had this disease, and it is debilitating.
Thank you, Mayor Pete. I'd just like to read the 10 common symptoms of Parkinson's, and I think you'll be able to relate to some of them. Number one is twitching or shaking your hands, limbs, face or limbs. Small handwriting, usually happening sudden. I used to start out with big, and now I'm down to the tip of a pencil. Sudden loss of smell. Difficulty sleeping, thrashing, kicking, or other sudden movements. Stiffness of the extremities that will not go away, causing difficulty moving, walking, or standing straight. Constipation can be one of the earliest signs of Parkinson's. Weight loss due to loss of appetite. Changes to voice and speaking can sound monotone and be very quiet and hard to understand. Facial masking, reduced blinking, lack of emotion of the face. It usually starts out slowly and progresses with the illness. And lastly, declining balance and instability, which can cause falls, a sudden illness and increase in falls. So it's not fun hitting the floor because you don't have the muscle or the balance, and you don't want to wish it on anybody because it's just, as you said, it's degenerative. And I've had it 16 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And we have one member who was very fortunate. She lived 34 years. That's the longest I've ever heard anybody with Parkinson's.
Would you like a picture while we present this to you?
Of course.
Okay.
Come on in, squeeze in a little bit here, yeah. Yeah. There we go. No, you won't. All right, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I can see everybody's faces. Thank you so much.
We have another resolution. I'm going to read it to you and then is staff going to introduce this item? Do you want to read it or would you like me to read it? The compost.
I have a member of the Sustainability Advisory Board here to talk to you all.
Okay.
Yep, but he wasn't planning to read it. If you want to read the
I will
resolution,
read it then. Okay, I didn't want to take that away from him if he wanted to read it. All right, the next one is a resolution supporting the increasing the ability for Longmont residents and businesses to compost all reasonably compostable materials. Whereas the City of Longmont desires to reduce and divert solid and organic waste as a core tenet of the sustainability plan, which calls for generating less waste, diverting as much waste as possible from landfills, responsibly planning for managing waste, and adopting new technologies and practices to save money and reduce impacts on the natural environment and community. And whereas composting organic materials is an efficient and effective way to reduce solid waste and highlighted as the first item in the waste section of the Longmont Sustainability Plan. And whereas effective industrial composting can compost materials such as food containers and soiled paper waste, thereby providing a sustainable alternative to and phasing out of plastic and polystyrene foam materials from the waste stream. And whereas the compost stream must be kept free of glass, non-compostable plastics, and other contaminants to ensure a safe and economically viable composting system. And whereas recent policy changes by the city's compost partner, A1 Organics, significantly limits the types of materials that Longmont residents and businesses can compost due to problems with both contamination and limitations of the existing technology. And whereas this change in composting opportunities will significantly impact the city's ability to reduce solid waste, a core tenet of the adopted sustainability plan. Now therefore, the Council of the City of Longmont, Colorado resolves to explore with haste options to once again allow Longmont residents and businesses to compost a wide range of compostable materials through the curbside compostable organic collection system, including but not limited to food and yard waste, industrially compostable food and drink containers, and soiled paper products. Options for achieving this could include, but are not limited to, partnering with A1 Organics and other compost experts to eliminate contamination of the compost stream with non-compostable plastics, glass, and other materials through, and on here I have different websites that can be used, through educational, I'm sorry, I am messing this up, through educational campaigns and or Longmont City policy changes which support the goals outlined in sections WA2 and WA4 of the Longmont Sustainability Plan, and or partnering with A1 Organics and or other compost experts to develop strategies and realistic timelines for reestablishing the ability for Longmont residents to compost a wide range of materials, and or partnering with neighboring communities, potentially including cities, towns, and other large entities, to ensure and support the viability of regional large-scale industrial composting facilities, and/or helping either A1 Organics or a new composting partner acquire the capability and technology to sufficiently handle the realistic and reasonable composting needs of the city, including the composting of a wide range of industrially compostable materials. That was a wonderful but very long resolution. So do we have anybody from the sustainability group that would? I want to thank you for this resolution too, because it pairs very nicely with the motion we made a couple weeks ago.
Yes, that's actually my first order of business, is to thank you for already doing this. So my name is James Metcalf. I've been a member of the City's Sustainability Advisory Board since 2018. And I'm here today just to present and support this resolution that we on the board passed in October of 2023. I'd first like to thank the mayor for presenting and the council for voting to support the exploration of creating a region-wide composting facility. This is, as you heard, directly in line with one of the recommendations that we had as an advisory board on how to move forward with helping the city get back to full composting. Just a little bit of background. In April of 2023, the City of Longmont's composting partner, A1 Organics, rather abruptly changed their policies regarding what materials Longmont City residents could compost using the residential compost system. Specifically, the types of material residents could compost was reduced to include only food scraps and yard trimmings. Previously, the compost containers could contain a variety of industrially compostable materials, including paper products sold with food and other compostable plastics and containers. While we understand that the ability to compost food and yard waste has provided a significant environmental benefit to the city, the goals of the city's sustainability plan, which includes solid waste reduction, would still benefit greatly from increasing the capacity and ability of residents and businesses to compost. The resolution, as you heard, acknowledges the difficulties and challenges faced by A1 Organics, primarily the abundance of contamination in the compost stream. Colorado Public Radio did a wonderful report on this amongst other news outlets, and the levels of contamination were shocking and really just unacceptable. We believe that addressing this problem through some of the actions that we outlined and the one that you supported at the April 9th meeting would fulfill multiple goals of the Longmont Sustainability Plan, including developing support for curbside composting, which is goal WA1, providing waste diversion opportunities for the St. Vrain School District, which is goal WA2, developing a strategic waste management plan with regional partners, which is goal WA3, and increasing public education and awareness about waste reduction and diversion opportunities, which is goal WA4. I won't repeat the actions that we outlined as possibilities. I'll just highlight that our option number 3, which is what was supported the April 9th meeting, which is to partner with local communities to help create and support and ensure the viability of a regional large-scale industrial composting facility. Seems like a wonderful way to move forward with this. The Sustainability Board would therefore just like to present this resolution and offer our help as an advisory board in any capacity that could be useful to help implement this plan and to solve any problems that might come up along the way and move the city and region forward on waste reduction and efficient composting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now we are first call public invited to be heard. The first one on the list is Sharon O'Leary. Remember that we need your name and address, and you have 3 minutes, Sharon.
Only 3?
Only 3.
Sharon O'Leary, 534 Emery Street. Good evening, Mayor Peck and City Council members. I'm here tonight regarding item 12B, establishing a conservation overlay district for the historic East Side. As some of you might not be aware, in the mid-'80s, the historic East Side was established as a neighborhood. This was several years prior to there ever being a neighborhood group organization within our city. Our neighborhood organized as a result of the R3 zoning, which allowed demolition of older homes that were replaced with multifamily units. The historic East Side neighborhood developed our most recent RLE zoning, which limited the number of multifamily units and created architectural guidelines. The result of the RLE zoning has preserved the original historic look of Longmont's oldest neighborhood. In 2018, the city changed the neighborhood zoning to reduce the number of zoning districts, and as a result, we lost our architectural protections. We feel those protections were the key difference between the consistent historic appearance of the east side versus the west side of Longmont. Because the city changed our zoning, we feel it's the city's responsibility to fix it. We've been pursuing a conservation overlay district for the past year. We have grant funding for multiple mailings and labels ready to print. We're prepared to hold multiple meetings, create and deliver newsletters, and send multiple mailings to educate and meet the city's requirements. We agree with the city's conservation overlay requirements with 2 exceptions. First, we ask the planning director to use their authority to waive the requirement that we notify property owners outside the proposed district. Second, we request the waiver of the application fee of $750 plus $10 per acre fee. We're not trying to limit additions or ADUs within our neighborhood. We're only wanting architecturally to have them blend with the homes around them. We're proud of Longmont's humble beginnings, and we want to preserve that legacy. We ask that you assist and support the conservation overlay request, and we thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Sharon. Sherry Malloy.
Good evening, Mayor Peck, Mayor Pro Tem Hidalgo Faring, and City Council members. Sherry Malloy, 1632 Sherman Way. Happy Earth Week. The SRL Earth Day Festival at Timberline School was super fun and so rich in content. There were baby goats and food trucks with delicious food, too. It was all pretty fabulous. I hope you all will be able to watch the 4-minute video clip I emailed you today with gorgeous scenes of our amazing planet's biodiversity, narrated by Harrison Ford. It was really worthwhile. As a retired special ed teacher, I'm all about positive reinforcement for good decisions and behaviors. That's why I'm here tonight to say thank you for the win-win solution concerning the 4th of July festival and fireworks. I will read my letter to the editor for public record now. It was recently published. Quote, kudos to City Council members, our City Manager, and City staff who responded to concerns expressed by residents apprehensive about the unintentional negative impacts of the 4th of July events on Dickens Farm Nature Area. The original proposal was for the festival to be held at Dickens with the fireworks launched across the street on Boston Avenue from the Fire Training Center. After hearing from anxious community members, staff explored other locations. At the April 9th meeting, the city manager presented some options to City Council to consider. Council voted for the festival to happen by Wibbies on 2nd between Main and Kembark. The fireworks will be launched from the Fire Training Center, where festival goers by Wibbies will be able to see them. The Dickens Nature Area will be closed to spectators. Closing off this protected area honors the commitment to taxpayers who voted to tax ourselves because we value conservation and protection of our open space and nature areas. Kudos, too, to the Kiwanis for their patience through this process. Our community benefits from the Kiwanis' generously funding the fireworks and for the many volunteer hours planning, organizing, and executing for a fabulous fireworks show. That's the end of that letter. As you know, I'm a member of Stand With Our St. Frank Creek. I wanted to invite you and all to a bird walk with Scopes this Sunday at 6 p.m. at Rogers Grove. Our very special bank swallow colony should be returning any day now, so that will be a treat. We'll see other good stuff too, and we'll give an update to the city's efforts to save our bank swallows when the RSVP gets going for that stretch of flood mitigation. As you might recall, bank swallows are an identified species of special concern, and I think ours is one of 3 colonies in Boulder County. Finally, another kudo for tonight's compost resolution advocating for regional large-scale organics processing infrastructure. Hopefully, all involved in site location and so forth will get this on the fast track. Special thanks to County Commissioner Ashley Stoltzman for her leadership in jump-starting and helping direct this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Thanks for the kudos. We'll take them.
They changed the setting of it. I don't know what.
Yeah. Lance Whitaker.
He just gets worse and worse every day. All right, my name is Lance Whitaker. I live at 1750 Collier Street, Longmont, Colorado. Been resident for 43 years. Like to tell you today is National Talk Like Shakespeare Day, which, well, I don't have any idea how to talk like Shakespeare, so you're out of luck there. National Picnic Day, National Cheesecake Day. I know some of you are waiting for that one. National Lost Dog Awareness Day. And National School Bus Driver Appreciation Day, and National Take a Chance Day. And on that note, I came across some humor today. President, a lawyer, and a man named Pecker walk into a bar. Yeah, it sounds like a joke, but it really is not. You guys have a good day.
You too. Thank you, Lancelot. For Ross. Girard. I couldn't read it. I didn't want to mispronounce it because I've done it twice right.
Exactly. Thank you. So, thank you, Mayor. My name's Faraz Girard. I live off of North 75th Street out in western Longmont, Colorado. So, this speech tonight I'd like to take this opportunity to address the folks that were against the fireworks. I listened to their concerns regarding noise, pets, little kids, no parking, and wildlife, among other items. As worried as you may be, at least you don't have to seek refuge in a bomb shelter or anticipate your entire apartment complex will be leveled by bombs. If you may feel insulted by what I said, very well. Honestly, I felt like I was slapped in the face twofold. One, I'm an American, son of an immigrant, but nonetheless an American. Let's be in high spirits on America's birthday. Let loose and have a beer or three. Hot dogs, play ball, dance, make love, read the greatest grievance ever filed, the Declaration of Independence, and light some fireworks while we're at it. Then, as a reminder, please don't forget how fortunate you are to live in America, how good you got it. Ask yourself, will I have enough food and water to last the day? Will my home remain intact? Will I have shrapnel lodged in my body? Will I have long-lasting health problems? Will I be drafted or conscripted into a war I didn't ask to fight? Is my neighborhood at the brink of starvation and disease due to occupation or civil war? Will I be hoping to die? If you didn't have to answer any of these questions, perhaps you may tell yourself this. Maybe, just maybe, I'll live tomorrow to continue expressing my concerns. However, there may be someone out there, not just globally, here in our community, that may not live to tomorrow, simply to breathe. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Altschuler.
Good evening. Steve Altschuler, 1555 Taylor Mountain Drive. The first thing I'd like to do is thank all of you for a couple weeks ago when it was 11 o'clock and you voted to let the last 2 or 3 people speak. That was very nice. I appreciate that. And I was one of those people, so thank you. One of the things I want to talk about, because I know that especially being a city council, your primary interest is for the city of Longmont. And one of the things that has come to my attention, and I spoke about this a little bit last year, but only 31% of the jobs in Longmont go to people living in Longmont. The other 69% of the jobs for people that live in Longmont, they have to drive out of town. And the same 69% basically come from Boulder and Erie and Louisville and Lafayette to come work in Longmont. And I know one of the goals, or it seems that one of the goals of Longmont City Council and Boulder County in general is to generate 15-minute cities so that cars won't be driven anymore ultimately. It would seem to me that the City Council could do things to encourage the businesses in Longmont to hire Longmont people. The success of that would be that each person living in Longmont would spend less time, less money, less gas driving to other cities to get their job. So they have more money for rent or for food or anything else, plus have more time in their life by not driving an hour or two every day to other cities. And I know I believe, because could be old news, used to do something for eating in Longmont, that the city would sell coupons, that people could go to restaurants in Longmont and generate more business for the Longmont restaurants. And my thought is maybe there's something like that that could be done for businesses in general. Find some kind of an incentive for the local businesses to hire Longmont people rather than people driving here from Erie and other cities. The other half what I want to talk about is the debacle in California with the minimum wage going up to $20 an hour. Anybody with half a brain knew that that would generate thousands and thousands of unemployed people. Hundreds of businesses would go out of business. A Big Mac special deal, whatever they call it, at McDonald's now is $25. You can't just arbitrarily raise minimum wage. It will just ripple through the rest of the community. The only way people can really get ahead financially is by working more hours and putting some of that extra income in the bank, or by taking classes and increasing their education. Thank you.
Seeing no one else on the list, I'm going to close first call public invited to be heard, and we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Don, would you please read the bills on the consent agenda?
Absolutely, Mayor. The second reading and public hearing for ordinances introduced tonight on this agenda will be held on May 14th, 2024. Item 9A is ordinance 2024-29, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of a 7-foot wide LPC utility easement generally located south of the intersection of Rogers Road and South Flat Circle. 9B is resolution 2024-21, a resolution of the Longmont City Council accepting the findings of Boulder County's US 287 Vision Zero Safety and Mobility Study. 9C is resolution 2024-22, a resolution of the Longmont City Council authorizing agreements between the City of Longmont and Stanley R. and Margaret Walker for the purchase of real property at 617 First Avenue for the First and Main Transit Station Facilities Project. And 9D is resolution 2024-23, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the revocable permit and agreement between the city and the Union Sailing Club to provide sailing opportunities at Union Reservoir.
Councilwoman Martin.
Yes, are we going to have a discussion with the staff about item B? Because it seemed like a good opportunity for a presentation, but our
Well, do you want to pull it?
I do.
Can we wait until we bring that back as to items that were pulled from the agenda?
Yeah. We either have to take it all the way off or not have a presentation.
But it is a resolution.
Yes.
It's only a resolution. If you want a presentation, I think the item needs to be removed from the consent agenda. So do you want to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
now I'm confused. You mean in the usual way?
Yes.
So that, all right. Yes, I would like to pull item B, resolution of the Longmont City Council accepting the findings of Boulder County's US 287 Vision Zero Safety and Mobility Study from the consent agenda.
Okay, and I'm going to move, I'm sorry, I'm going to pull item C. So with that, I'm going to move the consent agenda minus item B and item C. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor? That passes 6-1 with Councilwoman Christ in opposition. So we are going to go immediately then to ordinance on second reading and public hearing on any matter. This is 2024-28. It's a bill for an ordinance adding Chapter 2.18 to the Longmont Municipal Code for Code of Ethics. I am going to open this up for discussion. Do we have any discussion from city council members? Seeing no one, I am going to, now my computer does, there it goes. I'm going to make a couple of motions. These are just housekeeping changes on this code of ethics. And I move to direct staff to amend line 18 on the very first page to read quasi-judicial commission members. That would be line 18, first page if you want to check. Just to add the word quasi-judicial to commission members. And on the second page, line 21, remove the word board member and insert quasi-judicial commission member. And the reason for that is the only reason that in our drop-down, and you will have at your seat a document showing what the ethics complaint form looks like. The drop-down menu that is going to have the types of complaints that could be made, they don't refer to regular board members. They refer to quasi-judicial commission members. Because the board members on regular boards that we are liaisons for, outside of commissioners, really don't pertain to just regular board members. They're quasi-judicial governmental board members.
I'll second it.
Okay. Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I think, just to maybe clarify some of your comments, the idea being that our advisory board members
Yes.
are not making necessarily decisions, whereas our commission members make decisions.
Correct.
Okay.
You stated that much better than I did.
All right, just clarifying.
So, is there any other discussion? Councilor Martin.
Yes, Mayor Peck, thank you. I wonder whether this is enough of a change because our commissions sometimes do business that is not quasi-judicial. And what does that do with this change? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, but if it is a complaint against a quasi-judicial commission member and it goes to the hearing officer, I would think that the hearing officer at that point would say that it is, it doesn't come to the level of a complaint that we need to look at.
Okay.
And to be honest, this is more or less our first draft, our first look at the Code of Ethics. And as we go through it, we'll find things that we need to amend or tweak.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Oh, Eugene?
Mayor Eugene May, City Attorney, I didn't catch the second where you had sort of two amendments.
It's line 21 on the second page.
Section 11?
And it's section 11.
Yeah.
We crossed out board and just put quasi-judicial in front of commission members. we eliminated the word board member and just put quasi judicial.
Gotcha.
Does-
So I'm thinking page 1, line 18, board or commission member is a defined term, shall mean any member of a charter, Article 7, quasi-judicial board or commission? Is that what we're?
That one as well. We need to take out the board on that one as well?
No, I think if you put quasi-judicial before the board or commission on line 19,
Right.
then the defined term becomes Charter Article 7 quasi-judicial board commission. So then when that term is used again in line
21?
21, it will have already been defined to be quasi-judicial boards and commission.
So I don't need to take out the.
You don't need a second one, you just need the first one,
Okay,
I think. And I'm
well,
just-
What about the word board? Oh, I'm sorry.
but it's defined,
That's the thing is.
We have both boards and
page one is
commissions.
the definitions,
right.
and so once you move past the definitions, then it just carries over.
Because we certainly have a Master Board of Appeals, which is a board, and then we have Planning Commission, which is a commission. So I think you want to keep both boards and commissions, and I think the change that I suggested to the definition to board and commission member to define it as Charter Article 7 quasi-judicial board or commission will accomplish what you're trying to do.
Okay.
I see nodding heads over there too, just in case you don't believe me or
Oh, I totally believe you.
you think I'm making it up.
So just to clarify, I just need to put quasi judicial on page 1, line 18.
19.
Or 19, I'm sorry. And the rest of it will take care of itself.
Right.
All right. I'm going to withdraw my motion and make a new one. I move to direct staff to add the word on page 1 of our Code of Ethics, line 19, quasi judicial, before Board or Commission. After Charter Article 7, add the word quasi judicial. And it's still seconded by Counselor Hidalgo Faring. Let's vote. Donna and I discussed this beforehand. And that carries unanimously, thank you. And with that, I am going to move. Oh, that's right, we do need to have a public hearing on this, it's on second reading. Is there anybody in the public that would like to address the Code of Ethics, ordinance 2024-28? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion, which we just had. Let's vote.
I believe we need a new motion to pass the substituted and amended ordinance.
I'll move ordinance 2024-28 as amended.
All right.
Do you want them to say substitute as well, Eugene?
Or substituted.
Substituted and amended?
Substituted and amended.
All those in favor?
I'm sorry, who was the second?
McCoy. That passes unanimously, thank you. We're at general business. Are we? Oh, I'm sorry, items removed from the consent agenda. So, Counselor Martin, you removed item B.
Yes.
Do you want to turn on your mic?
Yes, thank you. This is going to be difficult to discuss because I was hoping for slides. I guess from reading the executive summary, which was the only thing that we had in front of us at the time, and I didn't get here early enough to read the paper that we have in front of us now. There's no paper? Okay. So the executive summary says that most of the accidents occur in Longmont, and yet the executive summary mentions physical barrier changes at the top and the bottom of 287 only. Can you explain what else happens inside of Longmont along the 287 corridor? Because, or explain that all the accidents are at the top and the bottom. I know we have a lot on 66. What's the rationale for that particular organization of modifications?
Well, good evening. My name is Phil Greenwald, Transportation Planning Manager with the City of Longmont, and we were hoping to have Boulder County staff here tonight to help walk you through anything that was pulled from the consent item or a consent agenda. So I apologize for them not being able to make this meeting tonight and do a better job of presenting than I will. But this is a study that was presented or that was going through the last couple years of work. After we did phase one, which was really bus rapid transit feasibility study, then the idea was to take this into a Vision Zero aspect and also look at other alternative modes. So there is an aspect of this study that is talking about how we connect all the jurisdictions along the corridor, especially between Longmont and Broomfield, with a off-street bicycle facility. So that's part of the study as well. And then the idea that you brought up, Councilmember Martin, about the idea of the medium barricades that would help really cut down the number of crashes we've seen over the last couple of years. Ever since this facility was increased to the 5-lane capacity, concrete facility that it is, both north and south of Longmont in the rural sections considered by this study. So there's been a lot of head-on crashes with that. And so the idea is to install rumble strips on the inside, on those inside lanes, as well as a median or a barricade in the median to keep those crossovers from happening on the highway. So those were the big things coming from the study, but the study also looked at each individual section in Longmont. And the idea was, and also the other cities, but Longmont was one of the critical factors that you brought up as well, one of the critical locations of crashes. And most of those crashes are with vulnerable road users, so bicycles and pedestrians were a lot of those crashes. What we're working on right now is our Vision Zero policy, our Vision Zero piece of this, to take care of those, or not take care, but address those crashes that happen at those intersections within the city of Longmont, working with the Colorado Department of Transportation. So this study did some recommendations on what kind of treatments could happen at each one of those intersections within Longmont. So there is, we did put that into the council communication, the long form. And so there are those various intersections and it shows specific improvements, and I can go through those probably at a later time, or we could have Boulder County come and do that as well. But I think the story there is that we're going to pick that up and run with it as far as Vision Zero for the city goes. And so the aspects that Boulder County is focusing on is the rural sections within unincorporated Boulder County, and working with CDOT on that. And we support that, obviously, because that's a lot of Longmont residents traveling those corridors. But the next phase of this is the Vision Zero aspect that we'll take on as a city with Cami Edson, our new Vision Zero coordinator, who's working tirelessly to put together a task force and get that ball rolling with the action plan that's part of that.
Do you expect, do you need this resolution to be accepted by council in order to start any capital improvements that are related to it that would be done by the city?
It would be helpful, yes.
Okay.
I don't know if we technically need it, Councilmember Martin, but it would be very helpful to move into the next phase and show that partnership with both Boulder County, the other jurisdictions along the corridor, and the Colorado Department of Transportation.
Yes, I was contemplating the idea of sometime when we have slides, inviting the Boulder County engineers to come and present, and maybe at the same time, you can have your intersections presentation, and we could accept both proposals at the same time. But if there's a problem with deferring, then I won't do that, and I'll just trust them. I think that was supposed to be a question.
I have no, yeah, I will respond by saying thank you. That would be wonderful if you could
Put it
accept
off.
the resolution now
Uh-huh.
and show that commitment to that partnership and to this plan, and then, or this study, and then we can bring folks in and show you more of the detail of this study and what's going to happen in the next phase.
I would appreciate that, because I think that it's important. We're going to have to start educating the public, and this is an opportunity to do that. So I don't think we should skip it, but I'm willing to, do a little advance acceptance. So I move acceptance of ordinance 2024-28.
Been moved,
Did I say it wrong?
yeah.
Oh, sorry, 21, yes.
It's been moved, Resolution 2024-21 was moved by Counselor Martin, seconded by Counselor Christ. Is there any more discussion on this? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes unanimously. The next one on the consent agenda is C, and I am the one that pulled that. And I pulled it just to make a statement that I heard from the public. And I just want to say that these parcels that are being purchased by the city are conversations that are being held with the property owners. There's no eminent domain, and it is fair market value and or relocation of the business. So it is a partnership that we are doing in acquiring these parcels for our bus terminal. So with that, I am going to move, which one was it? 2024-2022. I'm sorry. I move 2024-22.
Second.
It's been moved by, who else?
There was a bunch of.
So it was moved by, seconded by Counselor Martin. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. That carries unanimously. We are now at general business. The first thing on the general business agenda is an appeal of denial of a variance application by the Planning Commission acting as the Board of Adjustment and Appeals regarding a fence at 530 Alpine Street and consideration of R 2024-24, a resolution of the Longmont City Council upholding the decisions of the Planning and Zoning Commission acting as the Board of Adjustment and Appeals denying the 530 Alpine Street variance request. Let's see, where is this now?
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor Peck and council members. I am Kristen Cody, a senior planner with Planning and Development Services. You should have received a hard copy of my PowerPoint presentation so that you can follow along with it as I discuss this application. This evening, for your consideration, I'm here to present the appeal of a decision for a variance application focusing specifically on the property situated at 530 Alpine Street. Second slide. The property in question encompasses roughly 0.15 acres and resides within a residential mixed neighborhood zone. It is located east of Alpine Street, west of Cameron Court, and north of East 5th Avenue, falling under the city's jurisdiction following the Sunnyvale annexation in 1970. As per the envisioned Longmont Comprehensive Plan, the property holds a designation of mixed neighborhood. Third slide. The applicant seeks an appeal of the denial of 3 variances to permit for the continued placement of an 8-foot fence within the zoning district. These variances include a request for a 2-foot increase beyond the prescribed maximum height limit of 6 feet in a side and rear yard, permission to erect a fence in the front yard that lacks the mandated 50% transparency, and a variance of 4 feet 6 inches to exceed the established maximum height restriction of 42 inches in the front yard. Fourth slide. This slide showcases a visual representation of the fence. The first image provides a perspective from the applicant's property facing northward, while the second image captures the fence from the neighboring property to the north, facing southward. Both photographs were taken February 8th, 2024. Fifth slide. This slide outlines the journey that has led us to this point tonight. The fence was constructed in May of 2023 in response to a nuisance situation involving an adjacent property owner. Code enforcement was notified of the construction on July 26, 2023. The applicant opted to pursue a variance and submitted their application on November 14, 2023. The Planning Commission, acting as the Board of Adjustment, then conducted a public hearing on February 28, 2024. Sixth slide. During the aforementioned public hearing, several motions were proposed and seconded, yet none of them obtained the required four-vote concurrence. Consequently, the absence of the necessary four-vote concurrence led to the denial of the variance request. Seventh slide. This slide illustrates the appeal hearing procedure. Both staff and the applicant are allotted time to make presentations to council. Subsequently, the council has the chance to supplement the record if additional relevant evidence is submitted regarding the appeal issue. In such cases, both staff and the applicant are granted 15 minutes for rebuttal. Following this, the council will engage in questions, discussions, and clarifications regarding the appeal. Finally, council members will cast their votes, thereby reaching a final decision on the appeal request. Eighth slide. Here I provide an explanation of the appeal hearing procedures, focusing specifically on the property at 530 Alpine Street. The questions before council tonight are: 1, was the planning and zoning decision to deny the variance plainly in error because it lacks support from any competent evidence in the record? 2, was the PZ decision to deny the variance plainly in error because it was inconsistent with the review criteria, which is found in Longmont Municipal Code 1502.55 and 1502.060.I.5, as evidenced by clear and convincing evidence? Or 3, was the PZ decision to deny the variance plainly in error because PZ exceeded its authority or jurisdiction as defined by code or charter? Based on the answers to those questions, you will render your decision on this appeal hearing. Slides 9 through 11. The next 3 slides detail components of the review criteria crucial for assessing the approval or denial of any variance by the Board of Adjustment. Specifically highlighted are sections 1502.0552, which pertains to compliance with applicable city standards, 1502.055.3, concerning compatibility with surrounding properties, and 1502.060.I.5.A. Roman numeral 2 of the Land Development Code, which addresses the degree of practical difficulty regarding the property's use. The 12th slide. Here you will see information regarding the public notice procedures, which were executed in compliance with municipal code regulations. Initially, public notice was distributed through the newspaper, posting at the site, and mailing of public hearing notices to the property owners residing within a 300-foot residence of the property boundary. Additionally, as mandated by section 1502.040K.11, signage for the appeal hearing was posted on the site, and the applicant received mailed notification of the meeting along with the city staff report and attachments on April 8th, 2024. Slide 13, staff analysis. Based on the record and the materials submitted with the application, staff recommends that council pass a resolution upholding the denial of the variance. Slide 14. That concludes my presentation. Our code enforcement staff is here to field any questions you may have for them. Furthermore, the applicant is also available. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Do I see any discussion from council? Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you. I just want to point out, and please correct me if I'm wrong from the legal, but the Planning and Zoning Commission, acting as the Board of Adjustment Appeals, is impaneled slightly differently. The Planning and Zoning Commission is impaneled as a seven-member body versus a 5-member body. And so a 4-vote consensus to pass a variance is basically a supermajority for the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. So only 2 members can derail that. A majority cannot pass it. So I just want to point out that specific nuance between how a vote is taken at Planning and Zoning versus Planning and Zoning acting as Board of Adjustment and Appeals. And therefore, as you heard in the presentation, there were a number of variances or variance motions made that were seconded that failed on a 3-2 vote. So just to make that specificity known as far as how that works as compared to Planning and Zoning traditionally works.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I have some questions. First of all, page 2, section 2, line 14 of the staff notes. Let's see, what is the staff report? It says that this is a review criteria for variances. Line 5 states that special circumstances exist that strict application of the standards adopted in this development code would result in undue hardship or practical difficulties for the owner of such property. So there are several things that have to comply to make this work. And the only thing that I really saw was a self-imposed hardship. Now, we saw all of the reasons, the wife being PTSD and other health issues. What I would like to know from code, and I don't know if it would be code enforcement or who would decide this, do we think that this fence was erected for a self-imposed hardship? Was there any documentation from doctors that?
There is no documentation submitted that I am aware of or that I have seen. That was a question that the Planning Commission, acting as the Board of Adjustment, discussed in depth during their meeting on February 28th. And the issue that they had in regards to that criteria, if I remember correctly, was that variances are based on land use, and should a non-property specific situation warrant the granting of variances. And perhaps legal counsel could further expand upon that.
Well, then this can be interpreted any way you want then, because an undue hardship could be a physical or mental issue.
And that was what the Board of Adjustment struggled with.
Yeah.
Is that a hardship that relates to land use, which is what variances are relating to? So that was a part of their conversation, and that was the gist of what they discussed.
So if this is denied, do they have to take down the fence?
Yes.
Has the fence resolved the issues with the neighbors?
That may be a better question asked of the applicant.
Okay. Mr. Johnson?
Yes, the answer in this case would be a most emphatic yes. There are 2 factors involved here. Much of the documentation is trying to address the noise component, which certainly does create vast suffering for my wife with her PTSD, her autism situation, and her recovery from cancer. Had I known that medical records would be helpful in this case, I certainly would have provided this. We had medical records available at the first hearing. These were not asked for, and nobody seemed to be interested in them, so I did not bring them to this hearing. But the component above and beyond the noise component being reduced is the visual component. Out of sight, out of mind. The neighbors can no longer see us, and let me backtrack a little bit. We have lived in this house for 25 years. In this time, we have gotten along with our neighbors great up until the last 3 years. The neighbor in question remarried. His first wife left him, took all their children, gone. He has remarried into a second family, and in addition to the second family, there are tenants in the dwelling. The problem primarily comes from these tenants not so much the first family or the second family so much, though the younger child does seem to enjoy threatening us as well. As long as they cannot see us, they don't want to threaten us. You know, the visual component of our being eliminated from their sight lines they no longer play the loud music. Obviously, they can't make threatening gestures at us because they can't see us. They don't know when we are in our yards. Therefore, they cannot scream obscenities or throw fireworks at us as they have in the past. They cannot threaten my wife with sexual assault as they have on numerous occasions in the past because they can't see her and they can't see us. So absolutely, emphatically, yes. The fact of this fence being in place has just made the problem nosedive. We have not had any trouble with them since that thing has gone up. You know, maybe one instance of loudness that they turned it off themselves. We didn't even need to call anybody about it. So that is my answer to that question.
Thank you.
Yes.
So it also, from all of the documents that were in our packet, it sounds like the Johnsons have done mediation.
Yes, we have.
And have called the police several times.
Yes, many more than several times, yes.
With no I don't know what else they could have done. I personally would grant the variance based upon all the documentation that we got.
Thank you very much for your consideration. Yes, ma'am.
So it's up to the rest of the council to weigh in. Well.
Which all three?
Mm-hmm. I move that we grant the variance to the Johnsons in R 2024, what was it? Okay, let me get rid of this. R 2024-24, in that resolution, I grant the variance.
Second.
Based upon the fact that I think that that the Planning and Zoning Commission did not, I have to go back to that. Hold on, I want to make sure I say this right.
Mayor,
That their decision was plainly inconsistent with the review criteria.
They didn't show that.
I can have some discussion.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yes, there was. It was,
Who
I thought it was
seconded it?
Councilmember Christ. Did you second?
So I made the motion to grant the variance on 2024-24, and it was seconded by Councilor Christ. Let's have discussion. Councilor Christ.
I've just learned to do this. So something that stood out for me is that despite having a variance hearing, no one from the public came to speak at the variance hearing, and no comments were received from the public hearing mailing, which tells me there isn't a lot of uproar from the neighborhood about this fence. I'm going to disclose this is a connector street for me. It's one of the easiest ways, well, it's one easy way to get from the north to the south end of town from my neighborhood, as Alpine goes all the way from 3rd out to Highway 66 now. Okay, but, and so I took some photographs while I was traveling there and sent them to Kristen because I had questions. And I have to say, I want to say and acknowledge the excellence of our staff because I've continually had great experience in terms of getting my questions answered, in directing me, and in helping me learn the machinations about, you know, this is our second appeal, so it was new. Okay. So the home is in a mixed neighborhood. Like I say, it runs from 3rd Avenue all the way to Alpine runs all the way to Highway 66. To my knowledge, there's a church. Clark Centennial Park has one border with it. Skyline High School is on that street. And so it's becoming, there's a lot of foot traffic and also road traffic, vehicle traffic. So it's becoming less suburban. And so I think it's reasonable that we would see stronger boundaries on personal property, which addresses the 15.02.055.3. So I think it's likely we'll see more variances requested for front yard fencing as a compatibility layout and design for that neighborhood. The Johnsons have had a neighborhood situation for 3 years, a neighbor situation, and they have the right to enjoy their home. And if they have put up a fence to improve their relationship with their neighbors and to avoid calling the police. This, I feel, meets the practical difficulty requirement of 15.02.060, point I, point A, point II, item A. Okay, I don't know how you lawyers do it. And which addresses whether the property can have beneficial use without the variance, and I think they need the variance in order to have beneficial use. I did notice, I'm just gonna throw this in, that the neighbors in the photos presented here, that the neighbors have a circular drive. Look at the north one. So, and the fence is set back so that they have visibility to get out on Alpine. Just for me, I think I would like to see a little step down on the end of that fence in height, just to make it less boxy for the neighborhood. I concur with the motion to allow the variance, all of them. Maybe with the modification of a step down in height. I'll address the mayor and see if she would accept that as a adjustment to her motion. Yeah, starting from 8 and going, stair-stepping down each board a little lower until towards the sidewalk, yeah.
8 feet off the sidewalk.
It's 8 feet off the sidewalk.
Well, the fence ends 8 feet before the sidewalk?
No, I think it only has to be set back a foot from the sidewalk.
I'm saying what it currently is.
Where it's
Oh.
currently at, it's further back.
It's already set back a good 4 feet from the mailboxes.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting any further setback. I'm just
Okay.
suggesting that last panel, maybe each board, lower the height a little bit. Just to make it a little more visually attractive.
For the visibility purpose.
Yeah, and it would improve visibility also when pulling out of that drive, for both of you. How do you feel about that as an amendment? I'm 50-50. Slight modification, yeah.
So is that a friendly amendment to my motion?
It is meant to be a friendly amendment to your motion.
Okay. So we need code enforcement if that's going to be an amendment. Does that make any difference if they step it down? Or it
Not really,
I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't see how. If we look at the pictures on the last page, the visibility is already there. That's,
Right.
he can see everywhere.
So, Mayor, members of council, Dane Hermson, Code Enforcement Manager, I think that's really just an aesthetic thing that she's requesting. It wouldn't have anything to do with the code. The fence is so far out of the bounds of the code, I don't think it'd make much of a difference there, but it might make it look better.
So then, since this is just as aesthetic and we are here actually for the code, I don't think I'm going to accept that amendment. But it's a good idea. You can talk to him about it and he might agree.
I'm okay with that.
Counselor Martin.
Yes, I was going to ask a related question about that, which is, would recommending those step downs be something that the original Master Board of Appeals would be able to do? And I'm thinking maybe not.
I don't know.
I don't think that has anything to do with the code, and that's the issue.
No, it's the question is it in the power of the Master Board of Appeals to make changes like that? And somebody from the staff should know that answer.
Just one moment, Councilmember Martin. Jeremy Terrell, Assistant City Attorney.
Thank you.
I advise Planning and Zoning Commission on land use issues. So, Councilmember Martin, to answer your question, one option before council is to remand the variance request back to the Planning and Zoning Commission acting as the Board of Appeals or Board of Adjustment and Appeals. Among the authority or powers of the board or commission, however we're calling it at this point, is to approve an application with reasonable conditions. So that'd be a matter of whether or not the condition of stepping down the fence to some degree be reasonable or not. That'd be for the commission to decide.
But Councilmember Christ was willing to withdraw that, I think. Yeah, so it's not really relevant.
Seeing no other comments, let's vote on this motion. That passes unanimously. Now, Eugene, do we need a motion to remand this back with, or will it automatically go back to the Planning and Zoning or Board of Appeals?
Mayor and council, that was it.
That was
wouldn't
it.
go back.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
So our next one is B, information on process for establishing a conservation overlay zoning district for the historic East Side neighborhood. And Jennifer Hewitt Apperson will be addressing this for us. Okay.
Oh, it's, oh, there.
Only there.
Okay.
We have a little presentation.
Suggested the fact that they made multiple variance motions and didn't pass based on a technicality.
I know. Is it loaded?
It's not supported by any competent evidence.
I know. There was a lot.
I'm just suggesting that's how I would maybe argue it, but
Yes.
it doesn't matter.
Oh, sweet. We can actually see it up here. Sweet. Perfect. Okay. All right, good evening, members of the council. Jennifer Hewitt Apperson, Principal Planner with the Planning and Development Services Department. Looks like we almost have our technology working today, so I can refer to this particular screen. So tonight I just want to give you an update on the process for establishing a conservation overlay zoning district. First, I'm going to discuss the overlay district generally, and then I will go into a little more detail about the request from the Historic East Side Neighborhood Association. So a conservation overlay, or CO as I will refer to it henceforth, these are districts that are intended to conserve residential neighborhoods and areas in the city that retain the character of certain periods of development, stabilize and improve property values in these areas, and promote new construction that is compatible with the character of such areas. These requirements are an overlay, and they supplement the applicable standards found in the underlying zoning districts, so they don't affect permitted uses. One thing to note is these sound a lot like historic districts, and they're similar, but they are different in that they're a zoning solution that addresses lot and building standards versus specific design. But aside, historic district is really going to get more into a specific design approach in terms of what it regulates. They tend to be a little less on the bulk and massing and lot standards. One thing to note is that the CO may include detailed architectural standards that are more detailed than our general standards that are required in all CO districts. I'd also like to point out that the architectural compatibility standards that are detailed in the CO district are pretty similar to the architectural standards that were adopted for all residential construction as part of the 2018 zoning code update. One thing to note also is the CO district does in fact predate the most recent code update in 2018. There were some amendments as part of that particular update relating to minimum criteria for establishing such a district. So in addition to compliance with review criteria for rezonings, in general, the city council may zone an area as a CO district only if the area meets minimum criteria stated in subsection of this particular section of the code. And these findings are as follows. If the district retains the general character of its original period, if they are showing that they've had ongoing maintenance, or there's potential for rehabilitation of existing buildings, there is potential or there are existing pressures for redevelopment and new infill development in the district, and the district exhibits a significant degree of continuity in terms of the built environment. All four of those findings have to be met. It's not a either-or situation. So as I noted before, conservation overlays they supplement your underlying zoning. The permitted uses don't change. They are, however, responsive to the neighborhood context with special development standards that supplement the standard zoning requirements in a district. So in terms of what the CO district allows, I mentioned it's contextual. So in terms of setbacks, it looks really at block averages in terms of setbacks and lot coverage. So you wouldn't have a single standard that applies across the district. It's really a block by block standard. So in terms of setbacks, you would take the average of the existing setbacks on the block. Height really is anywhere between the maximum height of buildings on a given block and what the maximum building height limit would be in the underlying zoning district. And lot coverage is a little tricky. It's 50 to 125% of the average lot coverage on a block. So taking as a mathematical example, if you have a 40% average lot coverage on a block, a new infill construction could be 25%, or I'm sorry, could be 20% to 50% lot coverage. So there's a range. So in terms of the required special standards for architectural compatibility, these are, like I said, very similar to the general zoning code requirements that we have within chapter 15 for architectural compatibility. Again, specific neighborhood standards are optional. They can get more specific, but those more specific standards would need to be adopted at the same time as the CO district itself for an area. So in terms of architectural compatibility, it's a little broad, but it's basically looking at, is the roof slope and overhang consistent? Are the exterior buildings materials similar? Is there similar articulation, placement, and size of windows and doors? Are there front porches or porticos? So if there's a block that is dominated by homes with front porches, we would expect that there would probably be a front porch on a new home that was built on an infill lot. So in terms of the process, there's two ways an applicant can seek a CO district. And I'll get a little bit into more detail momentarily about the specific process. The process for establishing a conservation overlay district is exactly the same as any other rezoning. So it would follow the exact same process. In terms of the applicant must either be essentially a registered neighborhood group requesting a CO district for all properties within kind of their coverage area, or if there's an area without a registered group, there needs to be written evidence that more than 50% of property owners in the proposed district support this particular zoning. So again, as noted, this is basically the standard rezoning process that we would be following. Pre-application meeting with staff. There would be a neighborhood meeting at which signs we posted at various locations, mailed notices. Typically for a rezoning, we're mailing notices to all property owners within a 1,000-foot radius of the subject property for the rezoning. Once the neighborhood meeting is held, so one thing to note, we require this neighborhood meeting before we accept an application for for review. So the neighborhood meeting would be held, after which an application, any necessary fees would be submitted. At that point, we would be providing notice to affected property owners, again, signs, letters, that this was undergoing DRC, Development Review Committee review. So in terms of timeline, it really depends on the number of submittals by the DRC, required by the DRC, but typically that DRC review is going to take a few months, depending on workloads, et cetera, and how complete the submittal is determined, how much work needs to be done on it, et cetera. And so once the DRC review is complete, it would be then referred to Planning and Zoning Commission for a public hearing, who would then make a recommendation to City Council. So ultimately, we're looking at 4 different times in a process such as this that the public would be notified of this proposed district. And the applicant is required to do the mailings and make and post the signs as well. So we would be looking at doing those mailed and posted sign notices at the neighborhood meeting upon finding of a complete application. Upon the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing, and at that second reading of the ordinance public hearing before City Council. So with regard to the historic east side, they have requested a conservation overlay district for properties zoned residential single family in the area pretty much in yellow up on the screen. It is the residential single-family zone area from little north of 3rd Avenue up to 9th Avenue, between Martin Street and Emery Street, and it would cover the single-family zone properties on the west side of Emery Street as well. Wouldn't include the park, it only includes the properties in yellow. This area consists of approximately 150 acres and includes more than 750 properties. The first check, it was 777 total. So for right now, I'm comfortable saying more than 750. So in terms of process, they submitted this request last year. As Ms. O'Leary indicated at the public invited to be heard, they're seeking protections that they assert were lost after the 2018 Land Development Code updates. We did hold a pre-application meeting back in May. At that meeting, we talked through the requirements, what they would need to do, the notice issue, the fee issue. The code does allow the Director of Planning and Development Services to reduce the area for notices if appropriate, and that's something that the previous director indicated was appropriate or thought was appropriate at the time, so that's not as much of an issue. I'll talk a little bit momentarily about the fee question. So in terms of staff feedback, we can ask for supplemental materials. They're part of the rezoning application, or things that will help us make our decision as far as our recommendation, and really help us understand the issues, and also help us communicate and help the applicant communicate to the ultimate decision-making bodies about why they're making this request. So we requested a few items that needed to be submitted. One is a written narrative, which actually would be part of any zoning application, describing the proposed district, and including a rationale for the district that includes an analysis of differences between the previous RLE, residential low-density established zone, and the current residential single-family zone, and also provides specific examples of development activity between the time of the most recent code amendment in late 2018 and the present that would be inconsistent with the neighborhood character and might not have been allowed under that RLE zone. We also requested documentation such as meeting minutes from a neighborhood group meeting, that the proposed district had been discussed at one or more open meetings, and that the majority of people in attendance thought it was a good idea and agreed that it's something that should be pursued. We asked that this be done prior to the city facilitated neighborhood meeting because they do have slightly different purposes. And, we wanted, as staff, we wanted to understand that, there was pretty broad support for this. One thing to note is that when the code was updated in 2018, it was required to have this written consent from from 50% plus one of property owners within the district. The amendments basically allowed it to be an either or, to have either that or a registered neighborhood group. Staff, we thought it was important that, we could understand that there was broad community support so that no one was blindsided at the public hearing stage. So we also asked, the other thing is, as mentioned, if there are any architectural and development standards specific to the historic east side that the community wish to pursue, the code requires that those be adopted at the time of the CO district. A couple other things, HENA did initially request that the lot coverage be limited to a global 35% throughout the proposed district. However, we explained and they understood and agreed that the way the conservation overlay section of the code is written, it requires this contextual lot coverage and doesn't allow for a district-wide standard. So to do that would require a code amendment to that section of the code. We also were concerned that applying such a blanket standard could result in some a not insignificant number of non-conforming lots, which is just generally bad policy to do. So really we gave them next steps. We identified some things that we needed to do. And the big question is the issue of the fees, frankly. So in terms of the next steps, we are asking that they give us some meeting minutes, something that shows that they've discussed this at an open meeting and that it has community support. At that point, we would facilitate a pre-application neighborhood meeting, working with the group to put together a notice and figure out, where in the neighborhood would be appropriate to post notice signs, since it's not realistic that it be posted on all 777 properties in the district. So we just need to identify some key areas at which to post signs. Once that neighborhood meeting, that city facilitated meeting is held, then we would accept a formal application for this conservation overlay. So council direction really that we're asking for has to do with the fee waiver. HENA indicated that really the fee question is a big part of why they haven't moved forward. Rezonings are assessed at $750 for a rezoning application plus $10 an acre. So for an approximately 150 acre area, we would be looking at around $2,250, so which is a significant amount for a neighborhood group. We acknowledge. Section 15.0203A3 does give council authority to approve the schedule of fees under Title 15. The city attorney's office has indicated that council would need to decide to waive fees. It would be more appropriate for them to take a blanket approach as it relates to the CO district versus doing a one-off waiver. The code provides that fees may be waived for in part, typically for affordable housing projects, for projects that are initiated by public agencies or 501c3 nonprofits. So that is not something that this particular applicant would not fall into one of those criteria. So waiving those fees would require pretty much a wholesale code amendment. And with that, I'll stand by for any questions. And if Jeremy would like to pipe in about the code amendment, if I mucked anything up, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll stand by for questions.
Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. So if I'm understanding correctly from the applicant, when they have talked, and I've spoken with Bob McLaughlin and Sharon O'Leary in the past, this area had been had this kind of overlay on it before, and then in a process done by the city, it had been kind of taken away, and now they're asking for it to be kind of reinstated in effect. Am I understanding it generally?
That's the assertion. I have done some analysis of what the previous RLE, so the RLE, it was residential low density established, which applied to historic East Side. I think it may have applied to another district, but I know specifically in this case, it applied to the historic East Side. So I did take a look at that versus what was adopted in the current code when the various zoning districts were consolidated and the residential single-family zone was applied. My professional opinion is that there's not a lot of difference. The RSF district is actually more restrictive in terms of what uses it allows. The previous RLE zoning permitted, single family by right. It also did permit ADUs, but it did allow the option for duplexes, triplexes, and some multifamily to be considered approved as conditional uses. So the RSF district doesn't even provide that option. You can do single family, you can do accessory dwelling units, and some other, supportive non-residential type uses like in-home daycares and public assembly type spots like churches and the nature. There are architectural standards, architectural compatibility standards for infill residential as part of the land development code that were adopted as part of the updates, and these do address things such as roof pitch. Let's see, I'm looking at what previous.
But I guess my question is that you don't have to go into that
Yeah.
depth. But my question is that at one point they had something like this and then it was kind of stripped away.
They had something similar, but not exactly like this. So it wasn't I wouldn't necessarily say it was stripped away, but it was consolidated as part of a larger citywide rezoning.
And so now they're asking for part of some aspects of that back. It seems like to me that it's a bit of a one-off situation because of the fact that it had once had a similar sort of zoning overlay in the area. It doesn't seem like it's a universal sort of situation where that it would apply to all the other issues that you were talking about, trying to put them into that same category. I mean, I'm not against having those other things in those categories, don't get me wrong. I think, when we do city projects and there's certain criteria that are met, that we should be able to not charge ourselves for those types of things. That makes perfect sense. But I don't know that it needs to be, if it's not relevant for right now, to do that across the board, that it's necessary to do that we can look at this from a one-off point of view. But maybe our legal counsel can give me better advice.
Thank you, Councilmember McCoy. Jeremy Terrell, Assistant City Attorney again. Councilmember McCoy, I think the issue comes down to is there's not really discretion for City Council to waive that fee. City Council has a discretion to set the schedule of fees. There's no provision in our current code that would allow council to waive the development fee for HENA. I did note this to Jennifer, I think earlier today. Just as a point of reference, as Jennifer noted, historic districts are very similar to conservation overlays. We don't currently have a fee for historic districts, while we do have a fee for conservation overlay. So if council was so inclined to get rid of the fee for conservation overlay districts, that would bring some parity with historic districts and would also achieve the interest of HENA to remove that impediment of the $2,200 fee.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Correct me if I'm wrong, but let's say hypothetically the council moves and is passed that we direct staff to institute the zoning change. Does that not now put the onus onto the city? It's a city-directed zoning change and therefore not applicable to the fees.
That's an excellent question, Councilmember Rodriguez. I would still say that I don't think they would qualify because this is an overlay district. I think if we were rezoning the area away from residential single family to a different zone, that'd be different. But I think with the conservation overlay being an overlay district, I think that makes the distinction, is that there's no authority in the conservation overlay zoning district for council to initiate it. Under our code, it can only be initiated by the registered neighborhood group, and if there's no registered neighborhood group, 50% of the owners. There's no option for city council to initiate a conservation overlay district.
I thought you mentioned, or it was mentioned earlier, that public entities, 501c3s, and yada, yada, and do we not qualify as a municipality as a public entity?
We would qualify as a specific rezoning of a specific property, but not for the district. There's no provision within the overlay zoning district for city council to initiate a conservation overlay district. However, if council was rezoning particular property or a couple properties separate from overlay zoning districts, just generally speaking.
So what if we enumerate each parcel?
That would be an option. That would create, I would think that would create issues from notice, along with due process for the property owners, personally, but that is
All right.
something.
Some questions for thought.
Councillor McCoy?
Mayor Peck, I'll be brief. Is there any limitations to how they go about getting their, if we can't change the fee structure, and maybe we're not in a position right now to make that broad decision, are there any limitations of how they would obtain the money to pay for that? Is there anything that has to be cleared in regards to how they obtain those fees?
Councilmember McCoy, without giving HENA legal advice, it's a matter of just the city obtaining the fee, whether it's a briefcase of cash or a check. I think we'd be fine either way.
That's what I like
think
about
HENA
you
could
people.
run fundraising, they could collect from neighborhood property owners.
Yeah, okay, I didn't know if maybe there would be some sort of, something that would have to be identified like we do when we have political campaigns that had to be cleared in a time frame or some sort of thing like that. That's kind of what I'm asking, in the sense that I don't want them to get, sideways legally. They're trying to establish something, and do they have a time limit or anything like that?
I do want to clarify something that Jeremy said. Council does have the ability to change the fee schedule. And so what council would have to do is direct staff to bring back the fee schedule, excluding and make the adjustment to include the conservation overlay district in the same manner of historic preservation districts, and then council would then have to vote on it. Then once council votes on that and it's enacted, then it creates a situation where there would not be a fee in that case. It's just that the ordinance they're not written to allow it, but council can change the ordinance.
Would that hold up anything in regards to moving this forward?
It's 2 readings and then 10 days after the second reading.
And there are, if I may, items that the applicant could work on prior to when we would require a fee as well. So.
And I guess my next question is to the city manager. Is it a situation where we have multiple applicants in these categories that you would be concerned if we eliminated that fee?
It's a hard question. I mean, I think there's always the concern that if you started having the amount of work, and if you had multiple applicants, then that's over time could create an operational issue based on that. I'm not the attorney here, but council could say, I think we looked at this on a completely different issue when I first got here, but you could, and Eugene, I'm going to need you on this one, Eugene or Jeremy, you could give council the ability to do it in an ordinance change, and then the request would have to come before council to make the decision to waive the fees. I mean, Jeremy, is that a legitimate?
I think it would be fine, but to the question about the number of potential applications, the only way a conservation overlay district can come is from a neighborhood group or 50% of the property owners within the district. The 50% number, I think,
So
is
we're
a
not,
fairly
we're
high
not getting big
threshold.
lines of people showing up for this.
And
We have
Jennifer
not.
could know the registered neighborhood groups.
I don't have the number
Maybe.
of registered neighborhood groups, but I do know that we've had a provision for the conservation overlay zone in our code since at least 2002, and we have never had one come forward, so.
Okay, so, all right, thank you.
So I have a question. When you first started the presentation, Jennifer, you said that the CO was a supplement. Can you clarify that for me?
Sure, so it's a supplement in that additional development standards can be applied. They can come up with, in addition to the, broader contextual standards for setback, height, and lot coverage that I described. There are a couple other things in there as well as far as materials. They could come up with their own supplemental materials or supplemental standards that would add additional, development restrictions, but not as it relates to use. So the way the overlay works is it explicitly states that any use that's allowed in the underlying zoning district, in this case RSF, would be allowed under the CO district. There would just
Okay.
be additional standards.
Okay, my concern was the height standard. I don't want the district to just say no apartment building here at all, but they can then have standards for the architectural look of that building rather than, okay, that makes sense. The other thing I wanted to know, is HINA a 501c3?
No, they're a registered neighborhood group. I don't know that any of our neighborhood groups would meet that threshold. It's a pretty high bar.
Okay, and the other thing that I wanted to say is that given the number of homes and given the way developments go and people say, I had no idea this was happening, I would suggest that every single home be mailed that this is happening and that they
Absolutely.
need to, otherwise we're just going to have tons of people coming to council saying, what happened? So I do think it is up to the HINA group to absolutely contact everybody in that district. And as far as I'm concerned, the notice should, just within the district boundary, the notices would be fine. There's no reason to go outside that, from my perspective. So, Councilman Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. One thing just occurred to me based on some state legislation that's, I don't know where it's at now in this year, but it's been proposed last year, proposed again this year, and if it doesn't pass this year, I'm sure it'll be proposed again. Talking about kind of subordinating some of our zoning laws as far as that's concerned. This would not protect that neighborhood either, I don't believe, as far as the primacy of the state's laws, or has there been consideration of that? Because if it takes precedent over HOAs, it seems to me that it would take precedent over this as well.
Councilmember Rodriguez said that is correct. We have another 18 days, I think, or so before the session ends. But for example, one bill going through right now is a ADU as a right, or accessory dwelling unit as a right, which may or may not be consistent with the conservation overlay requirements if there's specific character and architectural guidelines. But if ADUs as a right are allowed statewide, that would trump any architectural or character guidelines for the district.
Right, and I know that there has been conversations also about allowing for paired homes and things along those lines in single-family zoning districts. And so I was just curious, this wouldn't have no additional protections that anybody else would have.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Seeing no other questions or discussion, thank you very much for this presentation, and good luck. We don't take any action on this, do we? It was just discussion.
Unless council wanted to give staff direction on the ordinance piece, changing the ordinance on the fee structure.
Councilor McCoy. Oh, no, I'm not going to do anything. Can you turn your mic on, please?
I was just trying to think about, they've kind of kept this going for a while here, and I think they'd like some sort of response on this. I don't know if they, they'd like to have some sort of answer in regards to the cost and everything. I guess I wonder if their representative would be able to give us shed any light on that. That was a major obstacle.
It is our major obstacle. It's kind of why we're at a standstill, because then we looked into becoming a nonprofit, and then that was too much work and really wasn't applicable. So we would have to look at fundraising, which is an option, and/or grant writing. But we're just trying to preserve Longmont.
Sure.
That's all.
All right. I just don't want this to just keep sitting here kind of spinning its wheels. I'm wondering if we couldn't at least explore what that waiver implications would have on on this, if there's any way of forecasting, and we can get a report in regards to some sort of forecast in regards to what we what problems we might create for ourselves. So
Councilmember McCoy, again, Jeremy Terrell, Assistant City Attorney. Perhaps you might want to, a motion to direct staff to investigate the financial impact on waiving the fee for conservation overlay districts.
I will make that motion.
I'll second it. Councilor McCoy made the motion to direct staff to bring back, what did you say?
Reports?
Yes. On the financial implications of a fee waiver request. And I seconded that. Seeing no discussion, let's vote. Can you bring that, because they are waiting, they've been working on this quite a while, can that be done fairly quickly? Another thing that we're loading your plate with?
That's something we can prioritize and bring forward.
Okay, thank you. And that is all you needed from us? Okay. Now we are at the staff presentation of the legislative bills. Do we need a break, or should we just move on? I know.
Don't worry, Mayor, I'll be quick.
You're always quick, Sandy.
Mayor Peck and members of council, Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager. I have one bill for your consideration today, and this is Senate Bill 24-195 concerning the protection of vulnerable road users. So earlier there was a similar bill that did not make it through its committee, but this one is a new one that amends the statute that governs the use of automatic vehicle identification systems, or AVIS. Not the rental car company, but the systems that would actually automatically automatically identify vehicles. This bill actually would kind of govern how State Patrol can use that, how CDOT can use that to be able to have that data create some more information for better decision-making when they are designing roadway systems. And so any kind of fee that gets collected on that actually would go back to those kinds of designs in order to make our streets safer. There may be some ticketing that happens for folks that are not particularly safe drivers, and that money would also go back towards making the road systems themselves safer. So since this is compatible with our Vision Zero goals, staff recommends that City Council support Senate Bill 195.
Councilor Martin?
I move to support.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor McCoy, that we support SB 24-195. Councilor Christ.
I'd like to see how Vision Zero affects our fatalities and traffic patterns also. I think this bill goes a little too far in terms of limiting personal property and, you know, having too much control over personal property. And I completely agree. I see cars misbehaving all the time. It would be really nice if somebody just could click a button and know who was doing it. But I think it goes too far against personal property rights. So I'm against it.
So we've discussed this bill for a long time in Dr. Cog and have reviewed it, amended it, worked on it, and I think it's a good bill. So let's vote. And that passes 6-1 with Councilor Christ in opposition.
Thank you, Mayor. What?
I don't know.
No speeding on Mondays or Tuesdays for me.
No more street racing.
We're going to be looking for you now.
Especially the troopers.
Exactly. We're now at final call, public invited to be heard. Is there anybody in the public that would like to take this opportunity to address us again? You're not going to read the newspaper to us, are you?
No, thank you.
Steve Altschuler.
Hi, Steve Altschuler, 1555 Taylor Drive. First of all, I wanted to wish everyone a happy Passover. It starts this evening. And it could be the barn door is closed and the horse is already out, but just a couple thoughts that I had on an event that happened earlier with the gentleman with the 8-foot fence. You know, one of my thoughts, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, obviously when you make an exception like that, it makes it so much easier for a lot of other people to want exceptions. So you do kind of open the barn door when you make an exception like that. One of my thoughts was, and again, since you've voted, it's probably too late to incorporate this, but if you're going to give that person an exemption, it might have been useful to say, well, this lasts as long as you live in the house, or if your wife passes away or something like that and you move, or if you move and sell the house or will the house to your children, then at that point, the fence should go back down to regular zoning situations. And that could help prevent opening that can of worms where a lot of other neighbors or people 5 miles away might see the fence and say, hey, I want to do that too. You know, so just something, again, it might be too late, you might not be able to do it now, but just a thought that I had that might have been a good option to put in that decision also. And I have one question at the bottom of this. You talked about the council contingency, and you had 46,500 and a carryover over from last year at 86,000 and change. Is there any limit to how much that contingency account can grow to? So for instance, if you hit $100,000, then next year could that be removed from the budget? Or would it keep growing until it's 500 or 700,000 or $1 million? Is there any limit on that, on where that contingency fund can grow to? And I don't know if you can answer me now, it's just a couple thoughts I had looking at this.
I was looking to see if Eugene was still here. No, I'm sorry, not Eugene, Jim. There he is. Jim, can you answer? There is no limit.
No, if council will remember, when we come into the next year, we ask you if you want to roll the funds over, and you decide at that point how you want to deal with that.
So in 10 years, that could grow to $1 million if nobody said,
Wouldn't that be great?
let's not roll it over anymore.
We could then get that, we could get your idea for the,
You can get that higher fence you always wanted.
yeah, we could have paid for the dome.
Yeah, I was just curious if there's any limit on how large a contingency fund can grow to.
I just want to make the statement, I know we're not supposed to do this, the public invited to be heard, but I have read the TC line comments, and the council contingency fund is almost always used to go back to the residents in some form or fashion. It is not money that the councilors get. It's
I
not our
understand
money.
that.
Okay, I just wanted to make that very clear from some of the comments I've seen.
None of those were mine.
You're right. Well, they are anonymous, Steve, I don't know. So, thank you. Is there anybody else in the public? Seeing none, we're going to go to mayor and council comments. Councilor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say, I want to give a quick shout out to Dr. Don Haddad for contributing, St. Vrain Valley School District contribute and paid for the life skills, the entire life skills event. He paid the school, St. Vrain School District paid for that for all those kids. So I just had to make sure I said thank you and let everyone know that he did that. And also, I just want to confirm with people what this partnership with the school district is growing. And now for our community events, St. Vrain, we will have the kids from St. Vrain School District to come and volunteer for Juneteenth, maybe take pictures. Those are in photography. I'm trying to interview some for co-MC. So integrating our youth in our community and teaching them and providing those opportunities for them to have that on their college applications to say they were a part of and help to coordinate a community event is amazing. So I just want to say thank you for the partnership for St. Vrain Valley School District.
That's fantastic. And on a very lighter note, if anyone has the opportunity to walk on the St. Vrain pathway just north of the Boulder County Fairgrounds, if you go about 6 o'clock at night or early in the morning, the frogs are amazing. There must have been 200 or 300 frogs. It was just an amazing, beautiful sound. So I've never heard frogs on that before. It's just a nice, quiet walk and brings you back to nature immediately. Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I just wanted to let people know about Silver Creek's Leadership Academy Evening of Excellence. It's Wednesday, May 6th. The students work very hard, and it's an important milestone showing off their capstone projects for their senior projects for the Leadership Academy there.
Seeing no other councilors who want to speak up, city manager remarks.
No comments, Mayor, Council.
City attorney?
No comments, Mayor.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.